Welcome back to Sky's the Limit podcast. I'm your host, Mike Doherty, and today we have an awesome guest. We have Jordan Berry from the Laundromat Resource. Jordan has an amazing story. He is a successful laundromat owner. Before that, he was a pastor for 15 years, and he transitioned out of that, and he's got a great story he's going to share. He also has established the largest laundromat education platform in the world. We're going to get into that a little bit. So with that, welcome, Jordan. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast here. Can teach everyone about laundromats. I know I'm personally interested in acquiring some. And so with that, welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on, man. Super excited to be here and talk laundromats. Kind of a, funny conversation to have about laundromats. But, man, I think laundromats are more exciting than people give them credit for. So excited to chat about that.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear how you got started, how you kind of transitioned from being a pastor to now being a, guru in laundromats. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it starts off with me being the world's worst laundromat owner. So look forward to that. But yeah, I was pastor for almost 15 years, like you said, and about a decade ago or so, a little over a decade ago, it was time for me to transition out of doing that as a job vocationally. And at the time I was married, had 2 young kids, and I think they were 3 and 1 at the time, something like that. And, we're trying to figure out what to do with our lives. And my genius idea was, we live here in Southern California. I said, why don't we rent out our house here in Southern California? We can take the money we've got in the bank and we can go buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii and live over there, at least till the kids are school age. And if we want to come back, we can come back and net gain condo on the beach in Hawaii, which
hell yeah,
sounds really great to me. My wife said we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so we ended up buying a laundromat and not a condo on the beach in Hawaii. And the reason that came about as an idea for my wife is she had a family friend who he worked a high-tech job, making good money, but working 70, 80 hours a week some weeks. And he ended up buying one laundromat and replaced his tech income and was working 5 or 10 hours a week. And so we're like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go do that.
The chase of financial freedom. Yep.
That's right. That's right. And it did not turn out that way for us, however. But that was the dream. That was the goal. So
nice. Yeah. So you didn't move to Hawaii, didn't buy that condo, stayed in Southern California.
Yes.
And you bought the laundromat. You probably had a broker involved in that.
Yeah. So at the time, I mean, there really wasn't a lot of information out there and available at the time. I mean, there's a lot more now. But back then there wasn't a lot of information. So I did as much research as I could, but really I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about laundromats. I knew nothing about real estate. And so I relied on probably the one person you shouldn't rely on in these things, which is the broker, the one who stands to make money if I buy the deal. And in that, because of that, there's some good brokers out there, but this one in particular was not. And he basically sold me a dream that was never going to be a reality. And so that laundromat actually it was losing money when we bought it. And it was a struggle to get out of that situation and figure out how to start making money with that thing. And it took a long time for me too.
But just like all, nothing comes easy, all good things take effort. And, I hate to hear when people lose money, but you probably learned a lot, and that you'll never also forget those learning lessons. And now you teach them on a lot of your educational platforms in your course, which I want to get into. But what are some things for all those aspiring to purchase laundromats, myself included? Mm-hmm. What are some things that we can look for during our due diligence when evaluating a laundromat? Like, what are the must-make due diligence points?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm going to give you what I call the 4 pillars of due diligence. This is like 6 figures of learning for me over here. I was losing tons of money over there, and I'm just going to hand it to you. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So 4 pillars of due diligence look like this. Pillar number 1, you got to know how much money's coming into your laundromat. So you want to know the income, right? And one thing that makes that, I mean, obviously that seems sounds very, obvious. However, laundromats by and large are still cash businesses. More and more are adopting digital payment systems, but most of them are still cash businesses. So determining the income on a cash business can be easier said than done. And there is no silver bullet for that. So I employ what I call the income verification stack. And that's basically trying to verify the income using different methods, stacking them on top of each other, and seeing if there's anything weird that stands out. I'm always looking for the anomalies. What's the anomalies here? Right. And just to give you a couple of examples of some things you can do to verify the income. So, number one, you've got coin count. And that's where you just literally go into the laundromat with the owner and collect the quarters or dollar coins or whatever, and count them together. And you want to do that over a series of collections and a series of weeks. Typically longer is better for the buyer. And then what you're trying to do is get an average daily income so you can extrapolate that out for the month and the year and see if that number meshes with what the owner was telling you was coming into the business. So that's one example. Example two I'll give you is what's called water verification. And basically, you're taking the water usage from the water bill, not the amount you're paying, but the actual amount of water the laundromat's using. And you're using that number, those gallons of water that are used, to back into an approximate income amount for that laundromat, how much money that laundromat's making. And that is it takes a little bit of work to do that, but we do have a free spreadsheet you can download that'll do the hard math for you there. But so that's one method. And then, another thing that I always suggest is get access to the camera system, right? If you got access to the camera system, then you can make sure the owner's not doing anything shady. Like, for example, in those coin collections, the owner could do, if they wanted to, what's called salting the mines, which is just adding quarters to the boxes before the collections to make it look like there's more money coming in than there really is, which the water bill should help you suss out too. So that's where you start stacking them and looking for things that are weird. But having that camera system will deter that. But also, if you need to, you can actually go through and scrub through and say, hey, okay, this family came in, they did a 60-pound wash and a 20-pound wash. I know how much money those cost, so I know about how much money's coming in. So you can actually just, do it that way too. So those are a few examples of ways you can verify income, and then things like, if you can get them, like taxes, bank statements. A lot of times owners won't give you those. Sometimes they will.
Well,
And they're
even
not
if
accurate. So
yeah, I mean, even if they do, if it's a cash business, how much can you really trust it, right?
yeah, yeah.
They're probably not trying to show as much income as they're actually earning. But yeah, wow. So how many laundromats do you own to date?
So I was up to 4. I'm down to 1 right now. I've actually been selling them off, but the reason I've been selling them off is because the intention is to go out and buy a whole bunch of them. So I'm extracting myself from the operations side of things, and I've got a team put together. We've got some money we've raised, and we're going out to buy a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. Do you find, so I know like wash and fold, I believe, is
Mm-hmm.
another part of the business in addition to, collecting quarters. Would they people pay by the pound for wash and fold?
Yeah. So when people think laundromats, typically we think self-serve laundry, right? One of the great things about laundromats is that you can actually uh, expand that business pretty significantly by adding a service side of the business, which would be drop off laundry or wash and fold, um, and or pick up and delivery, where you actually go to somebody's house or a small business, pick up laundry, bring it back, wash it, dry it, fold it, and then take it back to their front door. And the service side of the business, the drop off and the pickup and delivery, are booming right now, and I think will continue to do so. I would not be surprised if laundry becomes like lawns, where everybody used to mow their own lawn, and then it's kind of merged where a lot of people use gardeners now, if not even most people use gardeners and don't mow their own lawns anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised if laundry ends up that way because, listen, very few people actually like doing laundry. So if you can never do laundry again, that sounds awesome.
I'm one of those people. However, my wife, luckily, she loves to do laundry. I have no idea why, but so, but I hear you. Like if it was me, I would totally just pay. So I would pay someone to pick up my laundry, return it nicely folded, and I'll put it away. That sounds, and it's not like it's breaking the bank. I mean, it's not like a crazily huge monthly budget you have to prepare for it. But yeah, no, I'm totally, it's a good idea. I like the way, I think that's a good way to think about it is, it could transition more into that. So, um, what do you think the biggest expenses are owning a laundromat?
Yeah. So typically the three biggest expenses are going to be rent, labor, and utilities. Those are your biggest ones, and they can kind of shuffle between which ones more or less, depending on your business model and rent amounts and in your area, that kind of thing. But those are typically your three biggest ones, and then you've got things like insurance, maintenance, and if you've got like an older laundromat, maintenance might creep up there in the top three also. Um, but those are kind of your secondary, typically maintenance and insurance, things like that. And then you've got a bunch of little stuff like phone bills, internet bills, stuff like that. But those are your typical kind of
Yeah.
expenses. Um, and general rule of thumb for rent. Well, actually, can we back up when we were talking expenses, right? So we were talking about the four pillars. So number one
Hmm.
is determining the income. So you got how much money's coming in, then you got to know how much money is going out, right? So determining expenses, which is what we're talking about right now, right? Uh, and actually, there's an analysis calculator that you can go to on the website that'll help you analyze a deal. But if you go to the income and there's a little more options, it actually breaks down the most common expenses for a laundromat for you there. So you can actually use that as like a cheat sheet, a checklist
Perfect.
there on the expenses. Pillar number three is determine the laundromat's trajectory. So we've got money coming in, income, money going out, expenses, trajectory, which is basically performance over time, right? Income over time. And we want to know before it becomes your laundromat, is the business going up? Is it plateaued? Or is it actually declining? And why? So this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, because you could see where if like somebody says, "Hey, the average net income is $100,000, for the year for the last 12 months." If you don't dig in further, it could be that the first 4 months the income was 12, or let's to make it easy on me. Let's say it was $120,000. It could be that the first 4 months it was $12,000 of net income per month. The next 4 months it was 10,000, and the next 4 months it was 8,000. Right. Well, that averages out to the 120,000 per year, but things are not looking good in the direction it's going. Right. So you've got to find that trajectory and then uncover why it's doing whatever it's doing. If it's plateaued, how are we going to jumpstart this thing? If it's growing, how do we keep that ball rolling? Then obviously, if it's on the decline, we got to level off that decline and get that thing growing again. So we got to
Yeah.
have a game plan before it becomes ours on how to do that.
Right. That makes sense. How long do you typically see the due diligence period for laundromats? How long is that process? 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Usually it's 30 to 45 days. I mean, it's all
Okay.
it's all negotiable and it kind of depends on the laundromat, but pretty typical is 30 to 45
Okay.
days.
Yeah, I come from the world of commercial real estate, and you typically see in a larger commercial transaction that's it's about the same. So it makes sense. I mean, you're buying a business at the end of the day. A lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong. Have you ever bought a laundromat and the building itself too? So in
Yeah.
theory, you could have one LLC that buys the building, and maybe there's a couple of businesses in that little strip center, and you have income from the other businesses. And So you have income from the laundromat as one LLC, and the other LLC owns the whole plaza in itself. So it's kind of like you're leasing back to yourself. And in real estate, we call it house hacking, or I
Hmm.
own this office building I'm in here, and I lease back to myself. I'm paying myself rent. But in theory, you could do that for the laundromat too.
Yeah, actually, it's a really good. So yes, I've done that. It's a really good equity creation play potentially too, where if you can get it, you know, if you can buy the commercial real estate, it's going to be based on a cap rate, which off the net income, right? And the net income is the rents that you're getting. So if you can increase the rents for your laundromat and or convert your leases to like triple net leases and let the laundromat and any other tenants pay the expenses, that boosts your net income, and you can actually create a lot of equity by
Mm,
doing that in your real estate. And really, all you're doing is you're moving money from your left hand to your right hand, basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And now, when evaluating laundromats, let's just say the net income of it is $100,000, just
Mhm.
for easy numbers. What multiplier do you typically see? And I'm sure is this dependent on your geographic location? So Southern California, very expensive to live in. I'm in the northeast corner of the country. L- Some parts are expensive, some parts aren't, but like a 3x multiplier. So if it's producing $100,000 a year in net income, would you expect to pay 300,000 for that, or what kind of multipliers are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's actually been interesting. So the average multiplier traditionally has been 3.5 to 5x, kind of
Okay.
depending. And I'll tell you, actually, it depends on three numbers. Okay. And I'll tell you what those are to help you figure out what the multiplier is in a second. But typically it's been 3.5 to 5. What I've seen over the last maybe 18 months, 24 months or so is that there's more the visibility of laundromats has grown quite a bit. We got people like Cody Sanchez spouting off about laundromats, Brandon Schlichter, who's from Investment Joy, doing all the all the quarter collecting people where you see these buckets of quarters and stacks of cash, catching a lot of attention, which has been great, I think, for the industry overall. But it's caused a lot more people to take notice of the business. So there's more demand. And also, we're finally starting to see some technology come into our industry that allows us to not have to go around collecting buckets full of quarters, having digital payment systems. So that means you can own multiple of these and build a larger portfolio easier than you could beforehand. So what we're seeing is the multiples have actually creeped up. And I'd say probably on average, 4.5 to 5.5 is what I'm seeing a lot. You can
Wow.
get them less than that, obviously, and you can get them for more than that, obviously. But that's what I'm seeing: 4.5 to 5.5. And I just crossed over 1,000 consulting calls a couple months ago, and so I'm seeing deals all over the country and beyond, even in Canada, Australia, a little bit in Europe, and a little bit in Africa, actually, too. Uh, so. Uh, so I'm seeing deals all over the place, and that's kind of across the board. I've seen these multiples kind of going up. So the three numbers you need, kind of four, but three numbers you need to determine where on that spectrum the multiple is going to lie is: number one, you need to know how old the equipment is, so the age and condition of the machines. Obviously, newer equipment, higher multiple; older equipment, lower multiple, right? Number two is your rent amount. And the way that you determine if the rent is a good number or not is the benchmark is 25% of the gross income. So if your rent plus common area maintenance, or triple net expense, so your total rent amount, not just your base rent, but your total rent amount, if you can get that around 25% of your gross income or lower, that's good. I mean, that's what you're shooting for. Once it creeps up above that 25% mark, that multiple starts dropping down a little bit.
Okay. So total rent equals 25% of your gross income of that laundromat.
Yeah, that's what you're shooting
All
for.
right.
Less than that, obviously, even
Is
better.
Yeah, gravy. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
even
That's
better.
really, really good to know. So you're seeing 3.5 to 5.5 times multiplier.
Yeah.
What kind of cash flow are you seeing? So Obviously, net operating.
Real quick.
Yeah, go.
I
Yep.
got to give you one more number for the multiple here.
Yes, please,
All right.
please.
The last one is you need to know how many years are left on the lease. And why that's important, because a long lease is better for a laundromat. And why that's important is, let's say I'm a shoe store and my landlord says, hey, we're not going to renew your lease when it's up in 3 months. I'm like, dang, that's a bummer. So I got to go down the street, find a new location, rent a U-Haul, throw all my shoe boxes and shoe racks in the U-Haul and move down the street. Maybe I'm out of business for 2 weeks doing all that, but then I'm back up and running. The same thing happens with a laundromat. You're basically out of business at that point. You really can't move your laundromat to a new location. And so you're basically going to be out of business. So you need that long lease to give you stability and value in your business, and keep things like that from putting you out of business, really.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
it makes complete sense.
I just want
Yeah.
to get that because that's important for
Yeah.
a lease is super important for a laundromat.
So, is there a scenario where you find a rock solid laundromat, you're hitting all of your metrics, we'll say, but you only have a year left on your lease? Are you still buying that, or are you maybe trying to have the existing owner renegotiate that prior to selling so that you can have a signed lease prior to your closing?
Yeah. I mean, it begs the question of like, how short is too short, right? And what
Right.
I usually tell my consulting clients is 10 years is like the bare minimum that I think you should sign for a laundromat. And really, I'm feeling pretty uncomfortable at 10 years. So if I was negotiating a brand new lease, I'd probably go for something like a 10-year lease with 2 or 3 5-year options to renew that lease after the 10 years. So that gives me 20 to 25 years, which would be awesome for a laundromat, right? So if you're looking at one that's got less than that 10 years, like it's got 1 year less, a couple different ways to approach it. So number one, I would make my offer contingent on negotiating an acceptable lease with the landlord, right? So whether that is the current owner negotiating a new lease or negotiating extensions on the existing lease, maybe adding 3 5-year options. So now I'm at effectively 16 years. Or if that's me coming in and doing that, or the broker coming in and doing that, whatever the case may be, you've got to do that before you close on that deal. Because if you wait till after, that's just, you're running a huge risk. But also, unless you have at least 10 years, you're not really going to be able to get financing to purchase a laundromat if you need financing. They need longer on the lease to get the financing as well.
Interesting. Okay. Wow, that makes sense. So you bought your first laundromat. You learned a lot. You didn't have the best experience to start. Obviously, you came out on top of that. You bought a couple more laundromats. Tell me about your coaching platform now and the Laundromat Resource, which is a website with a plethora of information. I'd love to, learn more about that, and hopefully others listening to this podcast, if they are looking to buy a laundromat, they can, leverage you and utilize your resources.
Yeah. So, I mean, it came about, I never like intended to build a big platform or anything like that. So it came about because I made all these super expensive mistakes. People kept asking me about owning a laundromat, buying a laundromat. And then I would talk to people who had, bad experiences buying a laundromat also. And I was like, you know what? I've learned these very expensive, they were not just financially expensive, they're also emotionally expensive lessons. And I was like, I'll just share them. Nobody should have to learn the lessons I learned the way I learned them. So I'll just tell them, right? And so I started a blog, just a little blog on laundromatresource.com. I started a blog. And then I was like, man, it's really hard to write and it takes a long time. So I'll just do a YouTube channel. So I started recording some videos, and that started taking off a little bit. People were responding to that. It seemed like it was really helping people. So I kept doing that. And then I was like, well, if I really want to help people, I should also, like, I don't know all the answers. I should also talk to a bunch of people in the industry who are killing it in their own way. Right. And so that's where the podcast started. And I started just talking to just long form interviews with people in the industry, owners and other kind of industry experts coming on and talking laundromats. And it's just kind of grown from there, right? And there's a free course on there that you can go take to get started. I recommend if you're going to get started in the laundromat business, like go take that free course. It's 3 lessons or 20 minutes each. And I know for a fact it's good stuff because number one, I'm talking to people all the time and I get the same questions over and over. But number two, I also do an almost weekly free live webinar on how to buy a laundromat, how to analyze a laundromat, and we go into more depth and all that stuff in those webinars. But one of the things I do before the webinar is to say, hey, tell me what questions you have so we can make sure we answer them in the webinar. And so I have this collection of years worth of doing these webinars where I have all these questions that I try to get answered in that free course, right? And then once you're honing in on a specific one, there's more kind of help for you there. But that free course will give you a really good foundation. Obviously, listening to the podcast gives you a great perspective from a bunch of different angles. And there's just a whole bunch of free stuff on there. There's tools on there you can use for free and download. There's a bunch of stuff on there.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I appreciate everything. Thank you so much. So now one of my questions that I had written down here was, you obviously know laundromats in and out. Are there any other? So I know real estate very well. That's what my podcast is mainly about: real estate investing, helping others achieve that financial freedom through real estate. But obviously, there's a lot of other industries like laundromats that I've looked into. Don't own any, but have you found any? Have you dabbled in any other type of asset class, whether it's self storage, which is, it could be passive, car washes, for example. Obviously, laundromats, real estate. Have you dabbled in any of those, and have you given those any thought?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have some commercial and residential real estate. And I mean, honestly, if I'm honest, like real estate is my favorite asset class. But if your goal is financial freedom or your goal is leaving your 9 to 5 or your goal has anything to do with cash flow, like I love real estate, but the average real estate deal cannot touch the average laundromat deal when it comes to cash flow. And if
What?
you're talking about leaving your 9 to 5 or financial freedom, you're talking cash flow, right? And the reason for that is, the average base hit laundromat deal, you're gonna net 20 to 25% on your money unleveraged. So once you apply leverage or a loan to that, those numbers just go up from there. And it's not uncommon to see a 40, 50 plus return on your investment, cash
Wow.
on cash return on your investment with a laundromat. And again, it's not entirely passive. I always see like there's a scale of passivity. It's like completely hands off and completely hands on. And laundromats, you can run them most of that spectrum. You can be completely hands on if you want, but you can run it most of that spectrum. But it's probably never really going to be completely hands off unless you're just a money partner doing a syndication or a fund or something like that, right? So, but you can lean them pretty heavily towards that passive side. And so the time for cash flow value of something like a laundromat is it's just hard to beat. The downside is that while you can build equity in laundromats, it's a little harder to build equity. It takes a little longer. It doesn't build it quite as quickly as you can with real estate. And then
Right.
both of them actually have really great tax advantages
Right.
with them
Yep.
too.
Absolutely. So, what kind of cash flow would I expect on? Let's just say that the net operating income is $100,000
Mhm.
on a laundromat, and they're asking $400,000 for that business. What actual cash flow would I expect to see for that?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it depends on if you use a loan. Like if you just buy that $400,000
Well,
cash,
yeah.
I mean, you're basically 100 grand minus your taxes essentially, right? And if you use a loan, then it's going to be 100 grand minus your loan payment. So, but then that also means you're putting less than that 400 down. So that's where that return on investment goes. Similar to real estate, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Goes up.
I guess I'm comparing it to real estate, and if those numbers, if like it, real estate must just have a crazy, it must just be a much higher multiple because for me to buy a $400,000 property, at least here in Connecticut, I would be lucky to cash flow 500 to maybe $750 a month.
Yeah.
And I mean, you analyze that. Let's call it $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year on a $400,000 purchase. I mean, I'm not a math guy, but you're not touching a laundromat return.
No. Well, and
That's
that's
insane.
yeah, and it's because of how it's valued. So, like for example, commercial real estate, right, is valued on a cap rate, right? Which is
Yeah.
all that is just the inverse of the multiple. So, if you're at a 10 cap, that's a 10x multiple, right? And like I said, top of the market laundromat's about a 5.5. So almost, you're gonna almost double your cash flow for a 10. And I don't know about, there. Maybe in the Midwest, you're getting 10 caps still, but
Yeah, you're
over
not.
here we're at like 3 to 5,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're
percent.
easily. Yeah.
And a 5 cap is 20x multiple, right? So if I'm getting a laundromat at a 5x multiple and you're getting real estate at a 20x multiple, I'm going to be making that much more than you in cash flow there, right? So
Yeah.
so that's where it becomes great when it comes to cash flow. However, that also means that if I increase the net operating income by $1 in my laundromat, I'm increasing the equity in my laundromat by $5, right? 5x that $1. But if you're increasing it by $1 in your real estate, you're increasing it by $20. So that's where when you pair
Right.
these two together, you get your financial freedom with something like a laundromat, and then you use that money to start buying real estate to build the equity. That's where you've got,
Yeah.
and then both of them are pretty tax advantage. That's why I call the wealth tripod, right? Your cash flow, your equity, and your tax advantage, right? And they're both pretty tax advantaged. So you're paying very few taxes. You're building wealth with equity through your real estate mostly, and maybe a little bit of cash flow. And you're building your cash flow through your business, like a laundromat mostly, and a little bit of equity. You've got all three legs of the wealth tripod covered pretty well, and you're off to the races.
There it is. And that's how it begins. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's gold right there. Bottle that up. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was
Yeah.
it makes sense. It just makes sense, right? It makes financial sense. And I think a lot of people who listen to your podcasts, hopefully listen to this podcast, are kind of stuck in that 9 to 5. And I would argue the best way to get out is to find something you're passionate about, which is obviously making passive income, getting to that financial freedom. And laundromats are a great way to do that, in addition to real estate. I think
Mhm.
real estate is probably, for someone that is younger, maybe they're, 20s or 30s or even their 40s, to go out and we'll call it house hack and get like an FHA loan. I think that path of there's less path of least resistance there. So I see people do that more, but I think once you do that, leverage your W 2 job to get a loan for a laundromat, and then you can also have that cash flow that'll really propel you and catapult you to the ultimate goal.
Oh, dude, if you house hack and get something like a lot, like you're, yeah,
Light
dude,
years ahead of half
yeah.
the half of us here.
I'm in my 40s now, like if I would still do that today, you know,
Yep.
I would still house hack, and obviously I got to do a little different because I got a family, but I would still house hack and I would do that today, man. That'll
Yeah. I
accelerate
mean,
you pretty
house
quick.
prices are crazy. Are you in San Diego or
I'm
where
in
are you?
Orange County.
Or
Yeah.
is that outside of San Diego?
Yeah. It's between San Diego and LA. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, home prices are insane there.
Yeah. Their average home price is over $1 million here. Yeah.
That is wild. So house hacking might not be a bad thing if you could find like a nice townhome to side by side where you're not the up and down and hearing the stomping all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, I really appreciate your time. A lot of golden nuggets there. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Laundromatresource.com is there. And then all the socials are at Laundromat Resource. And my email is Jordan, Jordan, at laundromatresource.com. Not laundry mat, which a lot of people think, but laundromatresource.com.
Awesome. Well, again, I really appreciate your time. I will definitely be in touch as I continue this search for a laundromat. I'm so focused on real estate, but I want to diversify and look at laundromats because I know it's a really good income potential. But I appreciate everyone for
Listen,
listening.
you've got,
What's
I'm
up?
just going to say real quick, like you've got built in somebody in your family who loves doing laundry. So you might as well go buy a laundromat and put her to work doing other people's laundry and build that business up real big right there. So
I'm gonna tell her you said that.
that comes direct from me. And I only say that because I'm like thousands of miles away from you. Otherwise I'd
Exactly.
be too
Yeah.
scared.
No, that's awesome. But no, thank you again. And I hope everyone really enjoyed the podcast. If you want to learn more, you can check us out at skytreeinvestments.com/podcast. And you can see all of our episodes here. But thank you very much, Jordan. And really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Sky's the Limit. We're always releasing new real estate content. So if there's something you want to hear, be sure to leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.